This was a really great clip. I really enjoyed this. And these are two people who we don't hear from a lot on the left side of the indie media world. I'm talking about Tim Pool and Milo Yiannopoulos. Milo Yiannopoulos, the canceled troll who in 2016 made this huge name for himself and all this money by just bombastically putting himself out there as like the gay MAGA guy. And so he ended up going too far and getting canceled. He got his book deal canceled. He got thrown off of social media, thrown off of all the platforms.
When you advocate pedophilia, that's over the line for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
There just is no niche for you at that point.
Yeah, at that point, right. At that point, it's hard to get, it's hard to keep a gig anywhere at that point. And so
even McDonald's is going to let you go.
Exactly. He's been out of the spotlight for a number of years now, but he appeared on the Tim Pool show to discuss the midterms, how they went for the GOP versus how they were supposed to go, and what the takeaways from that should be. So let's have a listen.
People used to be engaged in politics because they wanted to get a glimpse of a better world, but that's the washing powder version of politics. I think people are well into bitterness. I think people want to see the bad guys bleed. I think that people want to see the bloodbath that you're talking about comes not from a desire to reimagine the world in a better way, because I think people are losing hope in that. I think people want to see their antagonists suffer.
I agree. I agree.
And the reason for the Republican frustration is that they were expecting a rare moment of catharsis, which is not granted often to people with right-of-centre politics, a moment in which they could reassure themselves that sometimes justice is done, that the universe is capable of delivering a true justice where it is warranted. And they were robbed of that. So what was stolen from them was not some kind of washing powder commercial glimpse of a better future. What was stolen from them was revenge. Yeah. Because these people don't feel like they've been out of power, and that's a shame. They feel like there are... I mean, they articulate their feelings now in very religious terms, and they talk about their enemies in terms of demons, devils, and Satan, and the way in which they express themselves, and I think the sunk emotional cost that they had attached to the midterms as a moment when they could reassure themselves that maybe there was, maybe there was still some glimmer of.
But they won.
Well, not really.
But they won what they needed, the House.
Okay. So they won what they needed, the House. So there you have it, and we are going to play the rest of this in a second. But there you have it straight from the horse's mouth, because this guy was the troll, the head troll of the MAGA movement. And he's telling you right now, what we want is to own the libs. This movement is about owning the libs. They wanted catharsis, right? Mm-hmm. And they didn't get it. Therefore, it was a failure. Let me play a little bit more, and then we'll stop it one more time.
No,
what could they have done better? What would they have done?
It was a bog standard or slightly unimpressive midterm in which the usual swing occurred. That is not what Republicans were expecting.
Right. They wanted
not what they were hoping
victory.
for. That's not a victory. When something happens that always happens, that happens whether you campaign or not, that happens whether you do anything or not, that's not a victory. That's people perceive that as a kind of as a sort of almost like a weather event, It's just part of the natural cycle of things. Yeah. There was no victory because there was nothing above and beyond what the ordinary course of a midterm election.
I understand what you're saying. That they needed something that proved something symbolic and something of meaning.
They just wanted the people who they feel are tearing the fabric of their civilization apart, doing all kinds of things that we'll talk about in the to suffer. They wanted to see the I forget what the Conan quote is. I haven't seen it for 25 years, but they wanted that. Whatever the first bit is, the lamentations of their women. They wanted shrieking. They wanted the 2016 energy.
Right.
They wanted to see liberals panic.
But that's nebulous in the sense that By
No,
taking
it's
by,
atavistic.
no. Look,
It's atavistic.
right,
It's
but listen,
fundamental.
There you go. No, it's not nebulous. It's fundamental. This is what's so great about this clip is that you have this disgraced, canceled troll who now has nothing to lose. He has no attachment to the movement anymore, right? Now he's just free to say what he wants. And now you have Tim Pool, who's trying to make some sort of high-minded argument about, well, no, we didn't actually lose, right? That this sort of sentiment about owning the libs and causing our enemies pain, that's all nebulous. And she's like, no, that's not nebulous. That is essential. That is all we want. And he's the guy who would know because he was in that space in 2016. He knows, no, this is all about making liberals cry. That's all this is really about. And what he gets to in this next moment is that they are really willing to take themselves down in order to do that. Like they are like this movement. That's why I call the Trump movement a certain death drive, because it is people who want to destroy and be destroyed. If they have to destroy themselves to destroy their enemy, they are willing to do that because, as Milo very rightly said, they've already given up hope that a better world is possible.
Right. Well, let me help him out with the quote he was looking for. What is best in life, Conan? To kill your enemies, to drive them before you, and to hear the lamentations of the women.
There you go. Yeah, excellent job. That's what they're
by winning the House. There can now be inquiries, investigations.
Okay, this is so hilarious. This is where it gets really good. When Tim Pool tries to, because Tim Pool still has a show. He's got 1.4 million subscribers. He has to convince his audience that, no, it's not so bad. There's still a future here.
We meant to do that.
Right, we meant to do this. Everything's fine. Don't worry about it. Watch Tim Pool try and sort of gin up some optimism in the audience, and him just completely shut it down.
By winning the House, there can now be inquiries, investigations.
Nobody cares about winning the House.
Right. So listen.
Nobody cares about winning the House.
So what
winning the House, you nerd? This isn't about governing. This isn't about doing anything. This is about making liberals cry. That's all this is about. They're not crying, which means we're not happy. Nobody cares about winning the House.
For them to get
elections are
the retribution, for them to feel the satisfaction is simply their choice. They got what they could get. Now, I suppose they wanted to see a tremendous landslide victory.
They didn't get what they could
which
get.
Wouldn't have changed anything procedurally. It would have felt good.
No.
Well, I would just add
they didn't get what they could get. They rightly intuit that they were robbed of this victory by people who should have had their backs.
But what's the victory? What does victory look like?
They wanted to see their enemies humiliated.
Right.
And they didn't.
And the only reason they're not being humiliated is because Republicans are acting like they lost.
No.
I like that. That I like so much. Congratulations, Milo Yiannopoulos. You have made our soundboard.
No.
That's going to be
No.
Whenever he says somebody we don't agree with, no. I mean, he articulates it right there.
It joins the vanguards. Hey.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Depending on the exigencies of the moment.
Yeah, it's the more British version of hey. Right. Yeah. No. And then Milo goes on to say, and we were going to play more than that, but he goes on to say, as some Republicans have, that party leadership underfunded a lot of the MAGA candidates, insinuating a certain sabotage from McConnell. And if you notice, McConnell did say over the summer, well, candidate quality is going to be a factor. It's going to hurt us, right? So what some people think, and look, they may be right. When you think about it, it kind of does make sense that maybe party leadership felt, hey, if the Republicans run the table with these Trump candidates, we're going to be stuck with Trump through 2024. If we sabotage them and they lose, then Biden's approval ratings are still not going to go anywhere. The economy's still going to be shit in 2 years. It's still going to be ripe for us to win in 2 years. Like, we're still going to have conditions in our favor. Right. So maybe if we just tank this, use this defeat to get rid of Trump, then we can win in 2024 the way we want to win, which is without Trump. I mean, who knows? That could be the case. So I'm not saying they're wrong about that. To me, the theory makes sense. But listen, as two Bernie Sanders supporters, believe us, we know what it's like to be fucked over by party leadership. At the end of the day, man, you got to win. If you can't win, it means you can't win, whether it's fair or not. Bernie lost twice. It was nowhere near fair. But you know what? He couldn't make it. And so whether it's fair or not, you have to look at the field now and say, Trump can't make it. This defeat was too crushing.
I could not defeat my good friend,
yeah, right, Joe
Biden,
right.
Who would make a very good president.
Yeah, right, exactly.
There is no particularly good reason for you to decide to vote for me instead of him, in fact. And yet I am still asking for your vote.
Yeah, and your donation, right? But look, whether it's fair or not, he can't win at this point. This defeat was too crushing. He could have taken the bye. He could have sat this out, say, hey, I'm going to let the process play out. I'm going to endorse our general election candidates, and we're going to think about 2024 when the time comes. He could have done that, in which case I think he'd be sitting pretty right now. That's not what he did. He chose to play the game when he could have chosen to sit out. And when you play, you have to win. There's
if he had sat out and they had lost, politics. He could have blamed it on the fact that he sat it out.
Right. Exactly.
You see, without Trump on the ticket, you don't win.
I mean, look, he could do what Obama does. The reason Obama stays relevant within the Democratic Party is that he doesn't get involved in the intra-party fights, except behind the scenes to sandbag Sanders, obviously.
But anything is going to happen to advance the cause of justice and prosperity.
Right, but within the Democratic Party, that's extremely rare. So for the most part, he just sits it out, and he waits until the fall, and 2 weeks before the vote, he goes out and he stumps for the candidates. That's how you play it if you're an ex-president, even if you want to run again. You don't put your thumb on it. You don't put yourself out there in a way that can backfire. And that's what Trump did, and it backfired massively. Massively. Joe Lombardo was the only Republican who unseated an incumbent. He won the Nevada governor's race. That's it. Aside from that, the Republicans did not knock off a single Democrat senator, a single Democrat governor. Despite 81% of Americans thinking the economy sucks and 73% of Americans being dissatisfied or angry at the state of the country, you knock off one governor, that's it, and no senators? Come on, man. You're out. You lost. That's it.
Well, Roe was the fucking worst thing that could have happened to the Republican Party. You know, they're the dog that caught the car. They chased this car for 40 years. Now they caught it. Oops. What the fuck did you think was going to happen? What did you think was going to happen? All of the pro-life referendums and all those red states went down in flames. Nobody wants your fucking crazy anti-abortion shit. And now they're between a rock and a hard place. How are they going to hold on to these religious fanatics that Reagan sold the party to and have been their most loyal foot soldiers ever since? How are they going to moderate on abortion without losing those people? Because religious fanatics, you know, they can tell you to go fuck yourself and just walk away. I mean, they're religious fanatics. They're not motivated by lesser of two evils kind of logic.
Right. I mean, they're not going to let a presidential election get between them and God's kingdom in the afterlife. I mean, they're playing a longer game.
They don't want to be left behind in the rapture.
Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. But that was just, I mean, that's just the honesty that comes from a guy who has nothing to lose anymore versus, I don't want to say the hucksterism of Tim Pool, but he's trying to sell his audience on a certain optimism that is just nowhere to be found in reality. And then you have fucking Milo.
Well, that's what a lot of the
just shutting him down point by point by point.
Yeah. A lot of the conservative commentators are doing it. The only one that I've seen who is being honest, I mentioned it a little bit on the live stream we did about the Senate, Paul Joseph Watson. The right wing has a term, the adjacent term to red-pilled is black-pilled. That means you've given into nihilism. You just don't believe anymore that any change is possible. That's what Milo is describing here. And that was Watson's explanation for this result. That the MAGA, the right wing, the Republican voters had been so black-pilled, and the public generally, that they just weren't gonna bother to really make any change. They just don't see any possibility. Now, of course, what he studiously avoided was wow, Roe really fucked us. None of the conservative commentators want to talk about this. Yeah. It's like they, and I said this from the time Roe dropped. They never were able to formulate a way to talk about this because nobody wants it. Not even their own people want it. So they tried to make being pro-choice an elite position. They tried to fall back on their usual bag of tricks, right? Oh, look at these liberals and their stupid pro-choice memes. It doesn't work because your own people are for that, right? Like, they might not like these people. Doesn't mean they don't agree with them on that point. They were never able to find a way to articulate we're going to move forward together in a post-Roe world with an anti-abortion agenda. That was never most of the Republicans, not even most of the MAGA people. That was always this small but very reliable voting bloc of evangelical Christians. That was never anything like a majority of the party, probably even less than showed up in polling, because as we can see from these results, there are a lot of people on the right who are just not going to answer pollsters honestly on questions like this. But when they go in the voting booth, it's a different question. It's a different matter.
I mean, if you look at it, honestly, the group of people who won this election for the Democrats was, more than anyone else, the deplorables themselves. Because if you looked at the maps of these states, the rural counties were still coming in Republican, but by nowhere near the margin they're used to.
Right.
The GOP was winning those rural counties 60-40.
And that's
not 70-30, 80-20.
That's all Roe.
And that's all Roe.
There's no other reason. There's no other reason for that. The Republicans, this is really their moment of truth, because 2024 is theirs for the taking. They need to figure out a position on abortion, and they need to finally walk away from Reaganomics. Those are the two things they need to do in 2024 what they could have done in this election. But all of the bad policy choices that they've been able to get away with for decades, all that came home to roost in this election. And it was really the Roe decision that triggered it.
Yeah, this is an interesting comment here. Holly says, I have much more hope for the Republicans. They at least seem to fear their base. The Democrats have been taught to throw us under the bus. Yeah, that historically has been true. But in this cycle, the Republicans really took their base for granted. And the Republican base sort of took the Republican leadership for granted, too. Like, I feel like there was not really much communication going on there. Everybody was just wrapped up in what Milo was just saying to Tim Pool. It's time to own the libs. We are very angry at the way this country has just deteriorated in these past 2 years, and all of that is very legitimate anger. But I felt like the Republican base sort of trusted the Republican leadership to sort of harness that anger and direct it in a way that actually led to votes at the ballot box. And I think that Republican leadership was sort of just relying on the base to make that translation themselves. Right? I think both the base and the leadership felt there's just so much anger in the air we can't possibly lose. And so they didn't bother running good candidates. They didn't bother coming up with a platform, right? Because who wants to do that, right? Ultimately, the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. Mitch McConnell loves that, right? Why do anything about that if you don't have to? So they all just felt that they could just ride this wave of anger into the midterms and blow the Democrats out. And politics is more complicated than that, right? You still have to block and tackle. You still have to do the fundamentals right, and they did not.
Well, they never offered an alternative, and what alternatives they were talking about were fucking terrifying.
Right, exactly. Right.
Cut it. Yeah, let's cut entitlements in a country where people are falling further and further behind.
Right.
And look, you can't just say, wow, that's crazy that they thought that. They've gotten away with that kind of shit for so long on culture war issues. That all worked until Roe. Roe is, pardon the expression, it's a trump card over all that shit, man. They need to find a resolution to Roe, or they're going to be in trouble even in 2024.
Please clap.